Welcome to the Team Engagement Podcast, where leaders of teams share their insights. Brought to you by Blue Sky Business Consulting. We discuss 5 questions in about 15 minutes.
Hello again, everyone. Happy Thursday. Hope that everyone's having a great day. So we are very glad that you're here. And I would like to welcome our guest today. This is Jim Spadaccini. He is the CEO and creative director of Ideum out of Corrales, New Mexico. And I'm trying to remember if I've had anybody from New Mexico before, so you might be the first. I'll have to go look. But Jim, thank you for taking time to be on the podcast today. And what would you like the audience to know about Ideum?
Well, thanks for having me, Sean. I think Ideum's a small company. We're based in kind of an unlikely place for the type of work we do. We're in Corrales, New Mexico, which is about 10,000 people on the Rio Grande, and our company is an experience design firm. So we work with a lot of museums, Jackie Robinson Museum. We've worked with zoos, San Diego Zoo, Monterey Bay Aquarium, places like that. And we also have some corporate clients. So we're designing mostly experiences for public spaces, but we also have a line of touch tables and touch displays that we sell worldwide. And we've sold that product in 45 different countries around the world.
Wow, that's fantastic. So is it primarily then for these spaces where a lot of, I'll call them tourists, but guests kind of walk through and have maybe kind of a mix between, the technology, obviously, but, live interaction, I guess, is that the word, with animals or people or whoever?
Yeah, I mean, it's really about that sort of physical public spaces and how you program for them. And we tend to lean a lot on the technology side, but we also build physical things. We built a scale model of Ebbets Field for the Jackie Robinson Museum, and then worked with another company, Gensler, and we, activated that with a lot of different digital technology, from projection to touch screens and LED and an LED wall. So, every project is different, and a lot of them wind up being with museums, but also corporate experience centers or large trade shows, that kind of thing.
Wow, that is fascinating. I especially perked up when you talked about the Jackie Robinson Museum, because as you can tell, I'm a baseball fan, and so I liked that. So that was smart of you to bring that one up. So, all right, Jim, that's awesome. Well, good luck and congratulations on your success so far. Let's go ahead and get started with our questions. Now, Jim, as you've been kind of building this business here with Ideum, is there a challenge that you've overcome that you're especially proud of?
Well, I think the one that certainly comes to mind when you're building things that people touch and you're talking about doing work in public spaces was the COVID, situation. And, for us, it was, and I know this was true for a lot of other companies, so we're not unique in that sense. But, when you're selling touch tables and no one wants to touch, or you're, building experiences to public spaces and museums and they're all closed, that's not a great business environment to be in, I guess, to say the least. So I think I was really proud of the way our team came together and the way we managed to get through that. We're a self-funded company, so we're a self-built company. So it wasn't like we had big cash reserves, or we could go back to and get a bunch of capital. So we had to find our own path through that. And there were times where that was really, really difficult.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't usually go into too much detail on how I structure the podcast, but it's important for this particular point here. But I ask the same 5 questions of all the guests of every season. And I think that, I asked that, what's the challenge you've overcome question to, 100 or so. And it's amazing how many people have said COVID. They say other things too, but man, COVID was a big deal. And so the fact that you guys even survived COVID is impressive. But the fact that you were also able to bring your team together and do some innovation and hey, we got to do some creative thinking here, that's a major accomplishment. So congratulations on just not only getting through, but turning into something that was really challenging and rallying the team and so forth. So that's awesome. I love hearing that story. All right. Well, question number 2, Jim, how can leaders, and especially in a creative environment like your own, I'm especially curious to hear your response to this next question here, but how can leaders help to kind of nurture a culture and an environment of creativity within their company or the team?
Well, I think it starts with respect, and that means you respect all of the voices on your team, including junior people who are just getting in to the business. It also means listening to your clients and listening to everybody who has some say in the project or that you're involved in. So I think that's really important. I also think that, having teams that are small enough that all those voices can be heard and agile enough that they can, make those changes as things come up, as new ideas pop up. I think that's important. I also am a strong believer in providing all of the tools that everybody needs to be creative, and that's everything from having great creative spaces, and we have a number of different sort of studio spaces and prototyping spaces and electronics benches and small fab facilities and that sort of thing. So I think, whether you're going to sketch out your ideas on paper, or you're going to build a prototype out of software, or you're going to manufacture something as a first article, all of those things, you need to give people the tools and give them the agency to allow that creativity to come through. So that's something that we very actively cultivate and we focus on all the time. It's as much about process as what gets produced.
I really like that, Jim, because you mentioned something that I think is unique to, as opposed to some of the answers that I get that I've asked previously. You actually emphasized providing the tools for them, and you gave a couple of quick examples there of some ways that you do that. But what a great reminder to all of the leaders out there to create that environment, yes, but also be able to provide them with the tools that they need, whether it's the space itself, but it could be anything from software and some of those other things that you mentioned. But I love that answer. I thought that was a great point, to make sure that the team has the tools that they need to be creative, because that sometimes gets overlooked. So,
all right, well, and the kind of work we do, because a lot of it is interdisciplinary. So we have audiovisual things, we have software things, we have other types of hardware, we have physical build out, fabricated pieces. So having all of those things work together in concert is really important. And we basically have built small departments that allow us to do all of those things. Sometimes we're on big projects and we're partnering with another AV firm or another fabrication firm or even another software firm. But I think the fact that we come at that with knowledge and understanding of what those processes are like, that just means we're going to wind up with a better product or a better installation or whatever we're trying to achieve.
yeah, well, I like that. I like that a lot. Great comments. Question number 3. Jim, how can leaders help the team members to learn to trust each other?
Well, I think in some ways the answer is sort of similar to the last answer. I think if you trust folks in the creative process, they're going to build trust amongst each other. And I think, again, giving some agency, making sure that your groups, the groups that are organized, are small enough that individuals here who are not necessarily in leadership feel empowered to move things along. I think that's really important. And I do think, as much as it's from the top down, it's also from the bottom up. And I think, a good organizations, strong organizations are always looking at that and trying to foster that. So a lot of times we're in situations where, like, well, yeah, we can help them through that, but wouldn't it be great if next time they know how to do this, they can do this, they could take that on. And before, when I mentioned tools, I do think, for example, if you use great software tools like project management tools, it allows you to kind of keep an eye on the project without coming in and being heavy-handed about, you don't want to go in and take over the project. You want to give people what they need to succeed in that project, but you still, you have an oversight role to do in leadership, and you need to do that. So how can I do that in a way where it's not disruptive of that team? That's usually what we're trying to do.
Great comments. Again, it does flow naturally when we create the right environment, and then kind of let people go. And I like how you blended in that tool, that software in this example, to allow for a little bit of oversight, but not feel heavy-handed or like we're micromanaging or any of those kinds of things. So great comments. Question number 4. This is kind of sometimes similar in response to the first question, but is it maybe in could either be work or personal? But is there a perceived failure that you turned into a win that you can share?
Well, I when I looked at the questions before you sent it, I thought this was sort of the toughest one. And it wasn't the toughest because, couldn't think of an example. I think that's almost because there's too many examples. When you're manufacturing a product that's using emerging technology, if you're not planning on, some failures along the way, boy, your expectations are all out of whack. So I think for us, that sort of, the fact that we have designed things that haven't worked or worked the way we wanted to and have had to go back. Those moments happen often. I mean, we prototype most of the software, most of the exhibit stuff we build. We prototype every product we build. Now, I'm not telling you every prototype's successful. You won't find out about the ones that aren't, right? But what happens is, obviously, those lessons that are learned, we incorporate those to build a better product, to build a better process, to produce a better exhibition or exhibit for our clients. So I think it kind of crosses all of these, sort of all the things that Ideum does. And I think we try to have an open environment where these things can get discussed and talked about. I think that's sometimes harder to do because, you don't want people to feel like you're placing blame on them, but you have to get to the bottom of why something didn't work. And then you've got to figure out ways to correct it.
Yeah, I love that. Especially right, that very, very last comment. You've got to be able to, without casting blame, you've got to get to the root of the problem and then ideally find the solution. And sometimes, and we all do this, but we sometimes feel a little bit attacked or a little bit defensive about it. But the irony is, we're usually the best one to know what went wrong and how to solve it. And so we do have to kind of own up to that a little bit. But yeah, I like what you said earlier also about, kind of fooling ourselves if we think we've never had any kind of a failure, we'll never have failure or anything like that. And your example of a prototype, I thought, was also a really good comment for all of us. Even if you're not into manufacturing, that mental picture of creating a prototype, knowing that it may not be perfect, but what do we need to tweak? What do we learn from it? We can all learn from that concept and that model. So great comments. All right, kind of our last question or fun question. Tell us a little bit about your first job.
So my first job was, my parents were friends with the local guy who ran a local plumbing company when I grew up in Connecticut. And I worked with them over a Christmas break for 2 weeks during it. Back when the Northeast would have deep freezes. Sadly, that doesn't happen anymore. That's how long ago this was. This was in the I think in the late 70s. And essentially we'd go around and we would try to unfreeze people's pipes. And sometimes it would work. You'd put these electrical things on, and all the pipes were copper back then. And you'd thaw the pipe out and hope it didn't burst. But if it did burst, then you'd have to, go in and repair it. And so it was kind of, it was my first job, and I wound up working with these plumbers who were working 10 to 12 hours a day, trying to keep up with all the calls. We'd come into we came into one residence. It was like a skating rink. They were out of town and water pipe burst and heater broke and the whole place kind of froze up. It looked like something out of Dr. Zhivago, which again probably dates myself again. But it was sort of a great introduction to the idea that some folks have to work really, really hard in their jobs. And sometimes it isn't an 8-hour day. And, and that was, I think I was 14. So I think that was always something that, that stuck with me. And I think it was useful, I think it was helpful.
Oh, I love that. Part of the reason I asked that question, and I've loved asking that question, because there's always some corollary between what their first job was and what they're currently doing. Not necessarily in terms of the actual job itself or the industry that they were in, but the lessons that they learned. And, for some, it's almost comical because they didn't like the first job, so they didn't want to do that.
Well, so you have a small company that's very busy, does a lot of different things. I mean, I don't know, fixing leaks seems like a good metaphor,
That's very true. Very true. Well, Jim, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our conversation today. Really appreciate you taking time. How can the people find you?
Oh, the best place to find us is on our website. If you want to see the stuff we do and see the products we make, that's at www.ideum.com, which ideum.com. We're also, of course, on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all those places.
Fantastic. Well, as always, everyone, we appreciate you joining us every week for another episode of the Team Engagement Podcast. We thank you and we wish you a happy day.
This is Sean Richards with the Team Engagement Podcast, where leaders of teams share their insights. For more ideas, go to teamengagementpodcast.com. We also invite you to follow or subscribe to our podcast wherever you may be listening or watching. Is your business thriving? Go to tbs-score.com to find out. Thanks for joining us today. Have a great day.